Photography. Depending on where we live, it's something we might take for granted. Here in the United States, I am free to photograph most things in a public space. I can practice my street photography, take pictures of architecture and famous buildings. And even here on my channel, I often encourage you guys to go out and photograph places in your neighborhood and people in your neighborhood. But not every country grants its citizens the freedom to photograph everything they want. This is Nicole Glass, and in today's video, I want to talk about a few examples where taking photos is against the law or frowned upon. But before I tell you how you might end up in a Korean prison, be sure to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with my photography stories. Recently, I was in Tibet, and on my first day there, I was told that I was not allowed to photograph Chinese flags in the country. My guess is that these types of photos can cause a lot of controversy. However, there were Chinese flags literally everywhere, including on top of all of the tents at Mount Everest Base Camp. So if you wanted to take a picture of base camp, there was no way to avoid having the flags in the pictures. But this did make me think about all of the places in the world where photography is severely limited or restricted. So I did a little bit of research just out of curiosity to see what kinds of photos are prohibited in other countries. Number 1, South Korea. In South Korea, it is forbidden to photograph women without their consent, and that includes women on the street, even if they are in public places. If you do photograph a woman without her consent, it is considered an act of sexual aggression, and you could be punished by a fine of up to 10 million won. That is the equivalent of $8,800. And 5 years in prison. According to Wikipedia, there was a 2017 amendment that allows for chemical castration of people taking such photographs. This amendment, however, did not pass. But this definitely shows how serious of a crime it is in South Korea to take photos of women, even in public places, without their consent. So if I ever go there, I definitely will not be doing that. 2. North Korea. Now, I definitely won't be taking pictures of women in North Korea either, or much of anything for that matter. In North Korea, you are not allowed to leave your hotel without a guide, and according to World Nomads, you should not take any photos without your guide's permission. The government might view taking unauthorized photos as espionage, and you definitely don't want an espionage charge against you. You could certainly get your camera confiscated, or much, much worse. Number 3, United Arab Emirates. In 2014, 70-year-old American Robert Allen Black was arrested for taking pictures of restricted areas in Abu Dhabi. He ended up just paying a small fine, but this does show how serious photography laws are taken in the UAE. Restricted areas can include military areas, palaces, courts, government buildings, and certain bridges. Most likely, if you live in Abu Dhabi, you already know what you are allowed to photograph and what you aren't allowed to photograph. But if you're a tourist, sometimes it can be difficult to know this, especially if you see a beautiful palace. I mean, who would have guessed that you're not allowed to take pictures of palaces? If you break the law, you might end up with a fine of more than $1,000 or 3 months in prison. Number 4, Japan. In Japan, you are prohibited from taking photos of certain temples or statues. There are, of course, some temples that allow photography, but there are also many temples that do not. And there is a list of temples that you're prohibited from photographing. I will link to that list below. It's in Japanese, though. Number 5, Algeria. Algeria also has some pretty strict photography laws. It is prohibited to take photos of men without their permission, and it is also prohibited to take photos of women without the permission of their husbands or fathers. And number 6, Tibet. Photography in Tibet is limited, but I actually haven't read too much online about what you are or are not allowed to photograph. There just isn't that much information. When I was there, I was told that I was not allowed to photograph Chinese flags, but I actually didn't find any evidence of this law online anywhere. Additionally, it is prohibited to take photos inside of monasteries, which is, sad for photographers because they are so beautiful. And of course, foreigners are only given a limited view of what Tibet is really like because foreigners are not allowed to visit most parts of the country. This definitely limits photography in the first place. Now, many countries in the world prohibit you from taking photos of police or military installations, so we don't even need to go into the details of that because it's so common. But when you really start to research photography laws around the world, you'll notice that not every place will grant you the freedom of photography. So if you live in a place where you can photograph pretty much whatever you want, don't take that for granted. because not everybody has that freedom. Anyways, all of this information is based on online research that I did. I'll link to my sources below. But of course, there are many different countries with many different laws and restrictions, and laws do change over time, so feel free to contribute your own experiences in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel for more, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.